Hi, today's video is about wood burning stoves. It's an unusual topic. Uh, so first of all, the stove, or sometimes people use the word hearth, which means fireplace or the fourth fireplace or the lowest section of the furnace where the fire is. In Russian, it's called achag. So this is, well, about our property. We have a house with about 3,000 square feet, and this is the model of the stove which would be suitable for this size of the house. And you can buy it at Home Depot for about $2,500 plus installation, delivery. So that's about the price. In Canada, there is another brand called Drolet, and there are some other examples. There are some links to different wood burning stoves. Yes, and installation cost maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, depends on how much ventilation work is needed, meaning tubing. Okay, this is US stove company. So it exists for 150 years, and it creates stoves, sells them under different brands. Like, for example, they acquired Ashley, Davidson, and Vogelsang, and you can see both of those brands. Like, for example, this Ashley Hearth is Ashley brand, right? But this is actually US stove. A very famous brand is Vermont Casting. They are made of casting iron. They look like they're old, but they're actually very modern as far as technology. They use the latest achievements. And so I highly recommend you can watch online. You can download the manuals, separation manuals, to see like how they work. And they come in different sizes. Here you cannot see the big difference in sizes, but they're actually different. This is another very famous brand, Hearthstone wood stoves. And again, they come in different sizes and different models. The most famous one is made of soapstone, sorry, and the walls are pretty thick, and it accumulates a lot of heat and then slowly releases it. So it's actually like a champion in like long-term heating, long-lasting, comfortable heat. And they also assembled in Vermont, same as Vermont Casting. But I think the stones are carved in Mexico, and then the assembly is in Vermont. There is another model here called Barry Plus. They actually made in Germany. But again, this is all Hearthstone brand. Here, some tricks people use to get more heat off the stove. This particular video I found interesting. So what the guy did, so he bought a stove for like, I don't know, a couple $100, and then he put more heat accumulating material inside, so he decreased the size of the burning chamber. Another thing he did, he put wax here, and wax, when you warm it up, it melts, and the process of melting takes a lot of heat, and then later when it cools down, it releases all this heat, and it stores heat better than sand or bricks. So it's a very unusual solution. And another interesting thing, you see the hot gases after burning usually they go directly through the chimney, but what he does, he makes this separate tubing where these gases warm, cool air. So you have another tube which goes through. They don't interact. They touch only by the wall. And so the hot gases, they warm this air. So this warm air goes up and it sucks cool air from the bottom. So two things happen. First of all, a room air gets warmer. And second, the chimney air gets cooler. So the efficiency of the stove increases because of that, because it gives more warm air into the room. 5 best wood burning stoves. Okay, this video I found interesting because the person is in the big store offering different kinds of stoves, and he discusses pluses and minuses of them. And the first one is, of course, Vermont casting, and the second is hearthstones. And again, this is Vermont casting, and this is hearthstone. Okay, cast iron steel versus cast iron versus steel as a material. Well, both are good. Both have some pluses and minuses, but I think it's more historic because nowadays you can buy very good stores in both types of materials. Catalytic wood stove or secondary burn. So when wood burns, you have some gases going out which still contain some particles, and you want them to burn completely, and there are two ways to do it. One way is you inject air from outside into the top of the flame, and this will create this secondary burn and allow for a more complete burning of all these particles, right? So this is called secondary burn. Another idea, what you can do, you can put some sort of metallic grid covered with some metal which serves as a catalyst, which again promotes better burning of these particles even at a lower temperature. The modern stoves, some of them are catalytic, some are not. Some have this secondary burn, some not. Of course, the best have both. Catalytic grid, so this is example how it looks. You have to be very careful not to clean it yourself, especially not with metal brush, because you will destroy it. You will remove this surface coating, the catalyst. So be very careful, read the instructions. Some more tips, what people do. One of the things people do, people get a tube with fresh air into the burning chamber. I actually have another slide which shows how it is done. So you have this tube from outside, from the window, into the floor of the chamber. Why it is done? Because wood stove needs to breathe, like it needs to get air for the fire. And usually it can go from the room, right? So in the room you have warm air, and it will suck it in, burn it, and throw out the chimney. So what will happen, more air will come into the room, let's say from outside, some cold air. And so on one side, the stove is warming up the room. On the other side, this draft of cool air into the room will cool it down. So to avoid this draft, what you can do, you can just suck the air through the tube and maybe make it insulated so it will not cool the room, and it'll just get the air directly into the burning chamber. So this increases the effectiveness of the stove. So this is one thing people do. Another thing people do, people here, example, you have stove down there and you have some tubing with the fan right here, which sucks hot air from around the stove and directs it into another room, like warming the other room. So the stove is actually in the basement, but it warms up the room upstairs. Use fans to circulate air. So these are examples of fans which don't require any electricity. They work on Peltier principle. So the temperature of the stove is very hot, and then the temperature here is not that hot, so you have difference in temperature, and you can use this difference to generate electricity and rotate the fan. So these are two fans which are rotating, and they circulate the air around the stove. Store heat in bricks, sand, or wax. So here's an example. You have the stove, and next to the stove, the person puts some bricks. They may touch the stove, maybe not, but air around the stove is very hot, and it warms the bricks, and then later the bricks release the heat into the room, maintaining a warmer temperature. And you can increase the draft into the chimney by cleaning chimney, or sometimes people put fan on the top of the chimney called chimney fan, and they are different costs and different construction. Electrical, you may have a switch to turn on off, like on the wall next to the stove. Use seasoned wood. There are a lot of videos on YouTube comparing different kinds of wood, but apparently the performance of the stove is very sensitive to the quality of the wood. Okay, next is how to run an overnight burn. So this video, it has a lot of small tips, and one of them is how you start the fire. And the trick is you don't fill the stove with wood from the get-go. You start with some very dry and something which doesn't produce smoke, like for example paper or some dry kindling, and then you let the stove run a little bit with this, so it doesn't produce a lot of smoke, but it warms up the tube. Because if in the chimney you have cold air, it kind of works as a plug, not allowing hot air to go up. So it needs to be warmed up, and then you add more wood, and then eventually you can fill it up with wood and leave for several hours. You regulate the performance by opening or closing the door at the beginning. At the beginning, you actually keep it open, but then you close, but there is a vent called damper. So there is an input damper, and there is usually a damper in the chimney. And so in air and out of gases, and you can regulate those to achieve better performance or longer burn. Rocket stove. Okay, this is a very interesting idea. So it goes back centuries with this lamp, argon lamp, which actually was patented. But the idea is if you have a long, relatively long chimney, and if it is heated, then it will create a strong draft upwards. And there is a company, actually non-profit, called Apravetch Research. What they were doing, they were working on designing stoves for like country, what is called, like third type countries. I don't know, in Africa, Lesotho, Malawi, Uganda, Mozambique, and so on. So actually, they made prototypes and designs of effective and cheap stoves. So this is the idea how it works. So you have the tube where the burning happens, and you isolate it from the sides. And what this allows to do, it allows to heat the tube. And the hotter the tube, the better the burning, the better the fire. So these are different designs of rocket stove. So on this diagram, you see what's happening. You're burning some wood, and then it goes into this razor, and then the hot gases go down around the razor, and what it happens, they keep this, well, not chimney is like output, but this razor, they keep this part very, very hot. And because of that, it creates a very strong pull. And the reason why it's called rocket, because this pull upward is so strong, and sometimes that if you make it higher, it will pull, it may pull the fire off the wood, like it's so strong. So this is your burning chamber. This is your riser, which creates this pool, and then eventually those hot gases go into some tubing. So, for example, they can warm this whole area and then go out of the chimney. So these are different designs. Like you see, it's like sofa or like bed. It's actually made of solid material. It looks like bed, but it's not bed. Like, and there are a couple books, 2014 and 2016. Rocket mass heaters, rocket mass heater. So again, rocket is this mechanism with upriser. So you see this razor in all these designs. Here, 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 this is razor. And then mass heater is some material which slowly warms up and then slowly releases the heat into the room. Okay, so this is very interesting design, modern design. This guy, Darwin Arnold, and his wife, they posted a lot of videos and they created their own detailed design, which you can actually buy the PDFs and instructions how to do this stove. He went through a lot of iterations, and there are a lot of tricks. Like one of them, he is using material called aircrete, which is aerated concrete. What you do, you use cement and you create foam using some oil control hair shampoo. I mean, you can buy special agents for that. So he made a simple, like $25 device. So you have air compressor, which pushes the air through this to create the foam. And then here's the foam, and then there is a cement down there, and he mixes them and then pours it into the form. And this is this bed, like this one, right? So he creates it. Again, there are tubes going through the bed, and there are some metal pieces. He uses copper because copper conducts heat very well, and for better warming of this mass, so he uses this metal construction, and then he pours this aircrete into it. So this is how it looks. So you have metal construction, and then you pour this element into it. The benefit of aircrete is that it's not as heavy as cement, as concrete, but at the same time, it's good isolation of heat and good accumulator of heat. And you can regulate how much foam and what quality of the foam. So you can regulate the weight and other properties of the material. There are a lot of videos how to do aircrete on YouTube, so you can learn how to do it yourself. So I really like this video where the person explains that when you're thinking about how hot gases behave, it's very similar how water behaves. But water goes down, right? And because of gravity, and hot air goes up again because of gravity. And you have this stratification layers of hot air. And once you understand how it works, you can come up with all kind of designs of those stoves. There is an interesting video where a person creates a system which kind of using effects similar to this, and it continues pulling air from this pool. So you see this is not air, sorry, water. It goes out. So similar effects you can achieve with your stove. Like for example, here you have burning, you have razor, then it goes into this area warming up this bed. Then, so the hottest air is on the top here, then it goes down, and then it goes into this tube, and then into this chimney. And no, this chimney close to the razor, so it gets heat from the razor, and because it's hot here, it creates the pool upwards, right? So it's a lot of small tricks you can use. Okay, this is a famous Russian wood stove. Was a big part of regular houses. So I just pulled some pictures. They were made of brick, and this is examples from other countries like masonry heaters. Same thing. There is some wizardry about how you actually do it. Like, for example, there is a certain design of how you make this stove out of brick, which has 93% efficiency, which is quite amazing, and I will not go into details of that here. This is a portable stove, and again, it can use the same principles of having heated chimney to create like pool and better burning. So this is a small portable stove. You can put it on top of the table, and so here is what you see. You have some isolation. You have draft through the warm tube. You have secondary burn, like air goes here to like closer to the top of the fire. And so this is a smaller stove, but again, with the same idea of secondary burn. There are a lot of links. You can buy those stoves for like $100 to $200. And the last one here is commercial pizza ovens, because I was just curious how they work. Well, they mostly use electric or gas, and you can buy them for 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 or more, depending on the model. Okay, this is the end of this presentation. I will stop the recording.